What's up, people? This is Ryan Velasquez, and you're listening to the Front Row Podcast on frontrowreservation.com. It is Wednesday, September 21st, 2016, and it has been raining constantly all day long in my neck of the woods. It's starting to border on depressing, but for all I know, maybe a monsoon and a voice that could pass as that of at least a B-level golf announcer are all that you need to record the best podcast anyone has ever listened to. To be determined. I know that I said last week that Tuesday was going to be podcast day going forward. It's just been that kind of week around here. So I apologize to those of you whose commutes were ruined yesterday because you didn't get to listen to my voice as you drove home. That's not going to be the case next week. So we'll be back to Tuesdays going forward. As usual, we got plenty to talk about on the show today. Another football weekend in the books. Louisville dominated. The Seahawks did not. Several other good storylines out of both college and professional football. But we are going to start this show with our friends from Penn State University. For those of you who have had a chance to read my college football recap column that I posted yesterday, I imagine you know where I'm going with this. I've already written about it, but I'm still pretty fired up about this specific storyline, so I'm going to talk about it a little bit more today. This was a pretty easy storyline to miss just because Penn State is not in the national spotlight this year as far as football is concerned. But for those of you who were paying attention or not paying attention, this is what went down in State College, PA on Saturday. Apparently this weekend marked 50 years since Joe Paterno coached his first game for the Nittany Lions. And despite all the horrific details that have emerged with the Jerry Sandusky scandal and Paterno's role in that scandal for what he did not do, what he knew and chose not to act on, despite all of that, which is enough to make anybody just flat out disgusted with anything having to do with that place, despite all of that, the university, the athletic department, the powers that be, decided that it was going to be appropriate to commemorate the 50-year anniversary of the first game that Mr. Paterno ever coached there by paying tribute to him with several videos throughout the game, basically just highlighting all the good stuff, all that great stuff, all the wins, 2 national championships, all the money raised for the school, all those good graduation rates for his former players, just a builder of men, just the leader that you dream of for your football program if you're a Division I school. Former players came back. It was like a homecoming, basically. Former players of note returned to campus, had festivities, reminiscent on good old Joe, all those fond memories of playing for the Nittany Lions and the impact that he had on their lives and what a great man and leader and just a shining example of what a man should be. That was pretty much the weekend, and they, like I said, 2 videos during the game just highlighting all that good stuff, and I imagine a great time was had by all 100,000 plus that they pack into that stadium on Saturdays. It's all just another reminder that place doesn't have a damn clue and doesn't seem to care about it either. Not in the slightest. I don't know if they just don't understand. I don't know if they just want to ignore. I don't know if they get it but just don't care, want to revise it, if they're just so deep in denial that they can't wrap their minds around it. But that they could possibly think that that's a good idea is just, it's insane. I just don't understand what they could possibly be thinking, how they could think that that was an appropriate thing to do after all that we've learned just this summer. We learned that Paterno knew or at least had enough information to suspect that Sandusky was the sexual predator that we certainly know he is now. He knew as early as 1976, and for 35 years chose to continue to allow him to coach, be on campus, do whatever it was he wanted to do. And it just makes you so mad. I just can't. I'm still fired up about it, which I imagine anybody would be. It's really. I don't understand why it's so hard for this school to let go and move on from this deity of theirs, who they just seem determined to continue to worship, despite the knowledge that we have today. It's the indifference is just so infuriating for anybody with a brain, and it's shameful. It's shameful, shameful, shameful. I can't imagine how anybody who was victimized over that 35-year period, just anybody who was victimized by as a child at all, I don't. It makes no sense. It's really depressing. It's infuriating, and it just goes to show you that despite all that's come out, that place is either willingly or not. They just don't. They'd rather hide their heads in the sand, hang on to those happy memories of Saturdays with their old buddy Joe Pa, and we're gonna overlook that other stuff and just celebrate the stuff we want to celebrate. It's disgraceful, and it just goes to show you that whether it was the fallout, the NCAA sanctions that came with it, the ongoing trials, all of it, they don't get it. Either they don't want to, or they simply don't get it, and it's a shame. And that whole university fan base athletic program, everybody involved, anybody with their hands in that program should be just ashamed today. And as long as they continue to celebrate that guy, it's just disgraceful. And all we can hope is that it serves as an example of what not to do for the rest of the country, the rest of the programs, Division I athletic programs in the nation. It's really infuriating, and clearly is still on my mind today. So that was what I took away most from this weekend, and it's really depressing. Fortunately, it seems that based on the reactions I've read from others, everybody else is pretty much in agreement on this one. Everybody outside of central Pennsylvania, for the most part, which is obviously a good thing. So even if Penn State never quite gets there, which I have very little faith that they ever will. It's only been 5 years, and here they are already celebrating this guy. So I'm not optimistic about them ever being able to get their heads out of the sand and shake off this denial that they seem determined to stay in. But all we can hope is that the rest of the country, the rest of Division I athletics will use this as a what not to do scenario. So. But fortunately, we also had a lot of stuff on the field to help shake off the depression that follows with that news. Like I already said, Louisville kind of stole the show in college football. I was not expecting to see anything remotely close to that. I know Louisville had played well in the weeks leading up to that game, but good grief. I can't remember the statistic, but I know that I remember reading that had to have been one of the worst losses Florida State's ever suffered, home or away. So, that's definitely enough to get your name in the national title picture. Louisville certainly worthy of a top 4 spot at the moment. They got to play at Clemson in 2 weeks, so we'll see how that affects their status at the moment. If you read my column yesterday on college football, you know that my top 4 at the moment is Alabama, Ohio State, Louisville, and Houston. A couple of those guys have interesting games this weekend that may shake things up. Actually, none of those four really have a challenge this weekend, so never mind on that one. I think Alabama's got another cupcake. Ohio State doesn't have anybody of note, really. Louisville's got a week till Clemson, and Houston, I don't remember off the top of my head who they got, but none of those four really have much of a test, so barring something ridiculous, that's probably going to be how my top 25 looks going forward until next week anyway. Out of the NFL, if I just posted that column a little while earlier, so for those of you who've already read that one, you know that I talked about Seattle and just how disastrous that offense is at the moment. 2 weeks is really too early to get too much of a read on where an NFL season is going. College, you can kind of start to see how things are shaping up a little bit. NFL, everybody's going to lose games, obviously, so it takes a little while. But I think it's time to go ahead and start getting concerned about just whether or not the Seahawks are going to be able to have enough in the tank on offense to even come close to making the playoffs at this point. The Rams have a good defense, but oh boy, were they bad yesterday. Not yesterday, Sunday. That was... You can't fix an offensive line issues like that in the middle of the season. It's going to take a lot for that offense to get anything going to the point that they're going to be able to score enough to beat out either Minnesota or Philadelphia, maybe Dallas at this point. Somebody like that for the wild card. They're certainly not going to beat out the Cardinals for the division title. So if I'm a Seahawk fan right now, I am not feeling too hot about the way this season's going, the direction it's heading. I think they've got some big problems that they're not going to be able to solve in the middle of a season. So hit the panic button right now, Seattle, because it could get bad fast. Elsewhere, I think the Bears are clearly one of the worst teams in the league at this point. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that one. I'm not ready to start panicking about New England's quarterback situation. They got 2 more weeks without Tom Brady. They could go 1-1 in this stretch, and they're still going to be fine. They could go 0-2 during this stretch, and they'll be fine. That team's so well coached. Clearly, you saw Brissett go into the game in the third quarter against the Dolphins when Garoppolo went down. I don't think we're going to see him slinging it around like a regular starter would, but the guy clearly knows the offense. The guy's clearly prepared enough that he can go in and not screw it all up. So even if they do struggle against Houston Thursday night, the Patriots they're the last team you need to be worried about right now, I think. But yeah, it's early for the NFL, so we're going to see how some of these storylines shape up. Jacksonville 0-2. I'm not quite ready to bail on their playoff hopes just yet. They've got just too many talented pieces on both sides of the ball. A lot of young guys, a lot of new guys. It's not always easy to get into chemistry right off the bat when you're throwing so many new players together at once. So keep an eye on that one. They've got, I think they play, who do they have at home this week? I can't remember off the top of my head. I just remember it was not a bad matchup. So don't be surprised if they bounce back and get going here pretty soon. The rest of that division is not particularly good outside of Houston. I think the Colts are in trouble. I think the Redskins are in trouble. God, what is it with that franchise? They just every time things start to go better for Washington, they just can't stop. They can't help themselves from getting into the drama game and screwing everything up from there. There are already talks that the locker room does not have faith in Kirk Cousins. Didn't we just play that game already with a different quarterback? Now all of a sudden we're diving into that again. Don't have faith in his decision-making, his leadership, all that stuff. Yeah, that's really they've got too many good players on that team for this to turn into a meltdown. They really do. They've got a talented offensive line. That defense is pretty good. They got enough talent at wide receiver. They're very deep there, especially if once Doxson gets into the swing of things. So if this turns into another meltdown for those guys, I don't know if they'll ever be able to put anything sustainable together as long as Daniel Snyder's running that party. I mean, good grief! It's a shame to see to see talent wasted with any franchise, but specifically those guys who just can't seem to get out of their own way. I think the Rams are still not very good, even if they were able to beat Seattle. I mean, I've already told you what I think Seattle, so I wouldn't read too much into that one. But I am already buying into what we've seen out of the two rookie quarterbacks in Dallas and Philadelphia. Dak Prescott was obviously fantastic throughout the preseason, so that's not a particular surprise. But Carson Wentz, I was optimistic about his chances to step in and maybe get somewhere by the second half of the season, but. Good Lord, did he look comfortable back there on the road against a bad Bears team, but still on the road. I thought he played well, and just no turnovers for either of those guys yet. That's really impressive. I'm not sold yet on both of those teams, top to bottom, being able to make the playoffs just yet. I mean, the Eagles and the Cowboys both have some problems on defense. The Cowboys obviously have a fantastic offensive line, but defensively they've got some real holes they're going to have to fill, especially as far as their front seven is concerned. So, it's exciting. I think Prescott is definitely. I don't think Tony Romo is ever going to take another snap for the Cowboys, so I think Prescott's definitely the guy going forward for them long term, which is always good news for a franchise, but. I would pump the brakes on both of them as far as their playoff chances are concerned. We'll see what they've got over the next month or so. Both of them have a few challenging games coming up. I think Philadelphia's they've got Pittsburgh this coming week. They got Cincinnati coming up here pretty soon. Dallas is going to have to face off in a couple of tough situations. So we'll see what those guys are made of here going forward as far as the teams are concerned. But I think that they've both I'm sold on both as starting quarterbacks, so they're both going to be the guys for the foreseeable future for those two. And when you can check that one off your list, you're doing something right. Let's get to a couple of my teams now. I think the Gamecocks. You got to accept winning ugly at this point for a team that's this young, lacks this much depth. I talked about this last week after the Mississippi State game. They just don't have anywhere close to the personnel to be able to win impressively at this point against anybody. So any of you who are moaning and groaning this week after what probably should have been a loss to East Carolina, you got to just take the good this year. Any good that comes along, whether it's a narrow win or McElwain, any of those young guys playing well, that's all you can ask for. And then just keep an eye on that recruiting ranking, which looks pretty good at this point everywhere I've seen it. So you got to take the wins when you can get them right now. And as for the Broncos, that defense is still pretty good, even if they're going to be without DeMarcus Ware here for a little bit over a month. They certainly got the horses, no pun intended, on that side of the football to keep things going. Shane Ray is finally starting to settle in. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the last go-around for Ware, regardless, just because of how much talent you got there with Shane Ray playing behind him. Trevor Siemian, I don't think pump the brakes on him a little bit here too. They got 3 road games here over the next 4 weeks, so we'll see how he does with that. But as long as this defense keeps playing the way it does, these guys are still plenty good enough to win 10 games, especially if the Raiders keep dropping games that they should win. They're lucky they're not 0-2 right now. So we'll see. It's a long season. But right now, if you're a Broncos fan, you got to be pleasantly surprised with this defense's ability to continue winning games. So we'll see what happens against Cincinnati this week. They're a little bit tougher up front than the Colts, so I don't know if the pass rush is going to be able to do it all by themselves this time around. But anyway, that's all I got for you this week, folks. Like I said, I'll be back on Tuesday, back to normal schedule next week. Things will settle down a little bit, so you won't be getting any late podcasts next time around. So this is the Front Row Podcast. I'm Ryan Velasquez. I will talk to you next time.